Bungalow Bill here. After a 3-week vacation, I have finally returned to the land of running water, electricity, and of course, from the depths. Now, it may seem to you that I have not left, but I scheduled 5 videos to release while I was away bouldering in Rocktown. I have returned to a new patch with some APHE, missile, and cram updates to look at. The patch notes generally look fantastic. This will be a campaign video, and I intend to follow it with a building video where I attempt to make my first breadboard craft. Of course, the first step to learning is believing that you can learn. In truth, I have some exposure to the necessary concepts, so you will not be witnessing a cold start, but it very nearly will be. After 3 weeks, the Seal Striders may believe that they have avoided my attention, but nothing could be further from the truth. Instead, I have spent the 3 weeks stewing their betrayal. I allowed them to live. I was going to consider their capitulation at the council meeting. Their unconditional surrender would have been acceptable. They would have been ground beneath my heels. But they would have escaped extinction. No longer. They will become materials for my mainframes. Now, I was going to go straight ahead and destroy Damascus. But they've got a big pile of ships here, along with the Reef Shark hiding in here somewhere, which I haven't fought yet.
Moving out. Listening.
So I'll go bring in a big pile of craft there. These craft from the Scarlet Dawn and the Grey Talons that were massing to fight each other are no longer doing so. They're massing to fight me. So I'm going to have to make sure that I have a few vehicles prepared, and I'll antagonize the Scarlet Dawn a little bit by beginning a capture so that they don't just start running me over. It looks like now that they're at war, the Twin Guard have spent a lot of money. Nothing really terrifying, but a lot of the Swarmcraft can actually be a little bit scary for some of my larger vehicles. So I do need to be careful and make sure that I have an escort for some of them.
Moving out. Listening. Moving out. Listening. Moving out. Receiving.
Now that the Onyx Watch has been removed, I can just roll through and take all of their territory.
Receiving. Moving now.
Fighting them wouldn't have been that interesting because they don't have a lot of vehicles that can actually productively fight against what I'm using. So it would have just been me obliterating some castle ships. Especially once we get more into some of the late game craft that I'm using. It gets less and less interesting. I don't know what all of these craft are. I'm just going to look at the costs a little bit. Alright.
Listening. Moving out.
I'll bring some of my ships together. Looks like the submarine pen got fixed up at some point so that it doesn't spawn vehicles on the seafloor anymore. This is going to be a really big fight. Hopefully my computer will handle it okay. It looks like 200k is the max, so we're not going to be spawning absolutely everything in. The torpedo bomber does have to spawn in. It's not really meant to be its own, a fleet that's used on its own, but it is really important as fire support, so that when I'm fighting some of these other craft, I'm not sure there are actually any submarines in here, despite the fact that this is the submarine pen. I think they already sent them all out to die. But just in case there was something that's underwater, and the submarine pen can spawn in craft during a fight, the torpedo bomber is important fire defense, or important extra firepower against those craft. Just make sure that I've spread my craft out a little bit. We'll see how well this performs. This is my first time playing with the new Unity patch as well. Just the classic spawn and lag. Okay, just making sure that we're targeting the Reef Shark with the Anubis. I'll be interested to see if the Reef Shark is better than it used to be. A lot of missile firepower. Either we already blew up a gun, or the APS guns just aren't that strong. This has always had some stability issues. I'm not sure if they're fixed or not. I know in a Borderwise video, it capsized and submerged, and that's been my experience as well. I have actually destroyed these in the past without firing a shot against them. They rely on some very delicate things for stability. Hopefully the torpedo bomber is not going to do the thing that the torpedo bomber usually does. For the most part, this is looking okay. Oh, they do have a submarine. The Remora. I had sort of forgotten about that. So hopefully the torpedo bomber will take care of it at some point. The Anubis can shoot at it. Despite using base bleeder rounds, it shoots down at a significant enough angle into the water that it should be okay. I don't like how close the reef shark spawned to me. Those lambs did some real work against my crams, but not all of them. So we're running pretty slow right now, but we are at least running. I wish the reef shark didn't spawn so close to me, though. Yeah, that's going to be a nasty collision. Yeah, I really wish these spawns were a little bit better. Some through and throughs there from the Anubis. The reef shark is still above the surface of the water, though. A few other crams coming in. We have 2 elephants, so that's probably the one that didn't get run over that was doing that firing. I'm not sure how effective the one that got run over is going to be at this point. Definitely losing some chunks from the reef shark, but it stayed fairly upright. So far, only significant damage is to the elephant that got run over. Low materials. Oh, does this not have any material storage left at all? That's actually what it looks like. Looks like we're targeting this maybe a little bit too much, but it is the most terrifying vehicle that they have. I'm not sure the Anubis can shoot down at it currently. I think it ran sufficiently under the Anubis. The guns do have AA mantlets, I think. But this is still asking a little bit too much of them. Alright, it looks like we've triggered the scuttle settings on the reef shark. It's hard to tell from this distance. This looks like a tremendous cluster over here. We've started retargeting some of the other craft as well. This will definitely be a cause for the slowdown. I would remove this elephant if I could, to get rid of the bounding box clashes that are probably slowing things down heavily. But if it's taking damage recently, I don't think I can remove it from combat.
Receiving. Engaging now.
I have enough forces here that I don't really need all of them. Looks like we're going to ram ourselves here as well. The elephant can reverse, so if it reversed early enough, at least I think it can reverse. It looks like we went pretty far into the lungfish before it started calculating.
Receiving.
Okay, so it did let us withdraw, that was nice. Yeah, we really don't need many of the crafts in here right now. Let's go back to our flagship and see what it's targeting. Actually, without going to the map, I might not be able to tell. Currently targeting the Remora. With base bleeder rounds, we'll have a little bit of trouble hitting it from here. But if we do hit it, it'll basically be immediately destroyed. I think the Thunder Shock, well, if we can actually hit, we'll tear this apart fast enough, so don't need to worry about that. This vehicle doesn't look terribly healthy. It looks like it's taking another cram hit as well. Oh, there's shields on the Remora. I'm seeing some bounces. looks like it's mostly, yeah, 80%. Mostly escaped damage. I'm assuming basically a single hit from the Anubis with the thump damage would immediately kill it. But it's gotten some really lucky bounces as well as some lucky misses. Basically everything that would have actually hit it has bounced. Remote guided missiles, not going to hit it. I should change the targeting on them so that they won't go for things that are below water like that. Having trouble recognizing what's this is coming off of. That does not help me at all. I don't know what the Dromio D is. I assumed it was one of the Saber craft, but those are called Lamb's drones. We've taken, 1% or so on a bunch of different craft. The Steel Striders really weren't bringing much firepower except for the Reef Shark. So far off that it's hard to tell, but it looks like we've destroyed the Revox Materials Factory. Make sure that I've got movement on all of my craft. Lungfish isn't moving though. It's at 99%. Screw's not turning though. I've no idea what happened. Looks like our movement's on for it. I don't think it lost the AI, so I have no idea what's going on as far as the movement. I think for their lasers they have redundant engines, so I wouldn't expect just one engine being taken down. Whatever was over here, maybe the submarine pen was spawning something in. The Revox Materials Factory looks like it's still here as well as the submarine pen. That is what this is, I think. Yeah, Revox Materials Factory. Alright, we've got a significant speed up. The number of craft in play have reduced significantly. Nope, that wasn't what was despawning. It did successfully spawn something in, the Panther. I don't think I've ever seen this before. That's cool. It can move its little winglets. Looks like something happened where it decided not to move away from the parent construct, maybe because it took a little bit of damage. I think almost all of the enemy craft have despawned so far. Yep, nothing left here. We'll probably turn towards the Revox Materials Factory with everything now. Maybe for a little bit of extra performance. They still have the Panther. I was going to say I could remove the Torpedo Bomber. The Torpedo Bomber does a little bit more than just drop torpedoes. It also drops sonar buoys. I don't technically need them because the Elephant can see submarines as well. But helps to have one more thing that can do it, and if the sonars get destroyed, it's nice to have a backup. Especially because I pulled one of the elephants already. How far away are we? We must be really far. Yeah, 3 kilometers. No wonder we're having trouble hitting this. We have made contact with a few rounds, but this is a tremendous distance to hit from. Although 96%, screws aren't turning anymore. I have a steam boiler. I'm not actually sure that really, or a steam turbine part. I'm not actually sure that really helps with the looks or not, though. Maybe it's to conceal some ugliness or something. I thought all of my crams have timed fuses. Oh, I do have one vehicle that doesn't have time fuses on its crams. If these have fuel tanks, I really need to give them a ballast tank as a replacement or something, but I don't think they have fuel tanks. Haven't seen any real torpedoes come in yet, though, despite the presence of the torpedo bomber. I don't think the submarine pen actually extends underwater, so it couldn't have been targeting that. Well, now that the Panther surfaced, it is very dead. That looks like the beginning of scuttling, because I saw multiple explosions at the same time with no hits. Yeah, there we go. Scuttle settings have been triggered. I still really wish that vehicles that were being scuttled counted as salvage, or destroy salvage, so I wouldn't waste a bunch of rounds into vehicles that are despawning. Because I should be targeting the Revox Materials Factory right now. See, so it looks like we took 2% damage on a few other vehicles. Still, the primary damage was the vehicle that got rammed by the Reef Shark. I'm surprised the Reef Shark got away from that as cleanly as it did, because it's got some fairly delicate components on its underside, and if any of those got scraped off, it wouldn't have been able to function anymore. It is, however, quite possible that
Listening.
the Reef Shark has been fixed
Moving out.
since the last time I fought it, and
Listening. Moving now.
as well border-wise, since border-wise
Moving now.
faced it,
Listening.
because
Listening.
I do know
Moving out.
that either the creator or someone involved in it noticed the issues with it on Borderwise's video and commented that it needed
Moving
fixing.
out.
I haven't stayed particularly apprised of
Listening.
patch notes and that sort of
Moving out.
thing,
Moving out. Listening.
so I can't really say one way or the other, or not patch notes, but actual changes in vehicles, because they don't really show up in the patch notes. So I can't really say one way or the other if they've actually been updated. I don't really know how to find that out. You can see some of the stuff on the Discord, but not everything. All right, let's do our first fight against the Grey Talons. Volume-wise, this should be, or not volume-wise, cost-wise, this should be pretty similar. Maybe not, though. We're much higher in volume. But no, I do think they have enough cost here. As usual, we'll spawn on our flagship, despite the fact that we're highly vulnerable in it because it's a front-sider with a front-facing cockpit for us. And we probably don't really need these Thundershocks, but they'll be nice to kill small things like the Valkyria that'll just be floating around. I'm sort of expecting us to just immediately terminate the first few crafts that we shoot with our burst. The main issue is if we spawn in too far away, we don't have good reverse on the Ra, so we will just absolutely charge through them. Okay, so far it looks like and not be able to stop. So far it looks like our lambs are doing great.
Engage.
I'll retarget to the Zephyrs so that we start reversing before we go too fast. We were targeting the Pike originally because it's the largest vehicle. Looks like the Thundershocks are targeting the Valkyria because it's fairly small. They don't have a lot of firepower, but 3 of them combined is really tearing it apart. Looks like there's some smoke that'll slow us down considerably because we are entirely lasercraft. Yeah, a single click is not supposed to move the camera like that. Let's try killing something else and hope it doesn't have smoke.
Engaging now.
Thundershock picking up some work with its lambs, a shell intended for the Ra. Yep, not a lot of damage, but does do what it needs to eventually. Yeah, definitely sky dwarves. That remark is very correct. Hopefully those blocks weren't coming off of us. I think that was the craft that we destroyed. Doing some better damage now that we're... And it's AI dead, so we're retargeting. Now that we're shooting something that doesn't have smoke. This is very confusing for me to follow. Definitely could use some backup other than pure lasers in this fight. No idea what this thing is. Oh, the pike. I don't think I've seen this before. Something weird happened there when I tried to lock on. I don't know if we grabbed the turret or something. Destroyed the block I was locking onto. That should really grab another block. Yeah, so it looks like originally just one big railgun, some heavy armor, and then some crams around it. Alright, we tore that apart. Now I can't see anything because it's so damn dark. But I don't think there's much left. I think even the Zephyr with its smoke has been pretty much destroyed at this point. So, you can try watching from inside Minecraft, but really not much you can see there other than the horizon. I did not leave a big window to see things through. I think because the cloud of smoke, that was the Zephyr going down as the last vehicle. Yeah, so we took a few errant shells, I think.
Listening.
But nothing...
Moving out.
Nothing really significant. I'm going to group all of these together so that I can make them a fleet that'll travel together. Then I'll start engaging some of the other Grey Talon fleets. Looks like the Sekhmet has a fight here for the first Scarlet Dawn fight. Yes, well, we might actually be a little bit outcosted here. Which is significant because this is the most expensive vehicle that I spawned in, and very close to the most expensive vehicle that I've ever built. So ideally we would start shooting the Sirius first. I imagine the targeting will be taken care of for us because, you know, it's significantly more expensive than anything else. We've got smoke going on already. This does mean that we're smoking our lambs. So I'll just take a really quick look. I'm not super familiar with the Scarlet Dawn craft. I'm assuming these are the Cosmos. Yeah, not a huge amount of laser firepower. We probably will take some appreciable damage this fight because we're smoking our own lambs. And then the Sirius, which mostly missile. So fortunately we don't really rely too much on lambs for that. Looks like a very serious missile bombardment. Because we've got some pretty powerful Sea-Wiz and missile interceptors. So we'll see how we weather this storm. What are we targeting? Not the Sirius, actually. Please don't do that.
Engaging now.
I really don't want to turn side onto the Sirius, or this is going to become a real issue. Actually, it might already be because we're outnumbered so badly, and we're a front-sider. We're taking some really nasty, nasty missile barrages. We want to kill the Sirius really quickly, and I think we might already be too late, so we might lose the Sekhmet, because our missile barrage went against the wrong target. And our next missile barrage is going to come out so late. Our first missile barrage probably would have just about killed the Sirius. The fact that we didn't get it is going to be a real problem for us. As well as the fact that our lasers aren't going to do very much. Against the Sirius itself, this would be a very easy fight. But down to 96%. So we're not doing that well. It looks like these missiles are getting distracted by fire distraction. We're still shooting at them because I haven't updated the CWIS with some of the new stuff that you can do for it. Where if missiles are diverging by sufficient amount, you won't shoot at it anymore. Looks like we finally got a decent hit in or two. So some pretty big chunks falling off of the Sirius. It's probably down to not the scariest amount of firepower anymore, and we're still at 96%. Yeah, so now that we've finally got in a few missile hits, which is really what we wanted to do the first time. It's how we beat frontsiders. Looks like there's a really big hole in here. In particular, our huge thump missiles do their best damage when they come down against these frontsiders and hit the relatively weak surface armor. I doubt the damage that we've taken is that significant. Lost one of our little defensive pods, but that's not the biggest deal. We still have 800 firepower, so that's pretty good. Yeah, so we've lost some surface armor. Looks like one of our turrets has been decapitated. Not in horrible shape, though. But definitely the fact that our first missile barrage did not go against the Sirius was a huge problem. I shouldn't have trusted the auto-targeting. It went for the closer craft instead. Front armor is starting to look like it's been mostly stripped away. You can still see some heavy armor left, but it's starting to not look so healthy. I haven't seen a missile barrage come out in a while, though. I hope I didn't lose any missile firepower. Nope. We're launching the missile barrage now. These missiles are mostly protected from the front. There should still be enough armor all the way around that, especially with our smoke, we're not in serious jeopardy from these lasers. Looks like the Sirius is despawning. It took some severe damage there.
Engaging now.
So we can retarget to other craft now. But they are significantly more vulnerable from the sides. Oh, and you can start to see some of our custom jets being exposed from the damage we've taken to the side. We've taken 8%. We're really intending that you have to get through all of this thick front armor to kill us. With a bunch of flanking craft, we have a much more serious problem. We're also probably relying too heavily on our APS right now because I'm not sure our missiles can actually catch things like the Cosmos. It's the top speed on 169 meters per second. That's way too fast for us. Yeah, so we're relying on a relatively weak APS right now. Especially because this front gun is a little bit vulnerable. You can see the rails just sort of sticking off the side, and it looks like we've lost rails on some of them already. I didn't want to make the turret cap really big just because it looks awful, but it's a definite weakness because I didn't. Did I just fall off? I just saw 0 materials nearby, but no, I'm still in. The enemies either have a lot of signal processors or remote guidance because we're taking all of the missiles. Hopefully we can do enough damage to some of these Cosmoses to slow them down a little bit. We're not that well equipped to fight craft that are this fast. Especially once we've taken some damage to our APS, which now we're down to 700 firepower. A lot of our APS, I think, is pretty shredded. Looks like this Cosmos is losing speed, though. We might... Nope, didn't quite get there. I was going to say we might get it with some of our missiles. If the missiles didn't have the issue where vertically launched missiles just sort of spin the wrong way around sometimes, I think this barrage would have gotten there. Unfortunately, that's never going to be fixed. I wrote a bug about it, and it got declined. So, yeah, really don't expect that to get fixed. This was some pretty poor targeting. These huge missiles are almost never going to hit something this fast. So just not a great matchup for us. I should have brought in some backup craft that are better against faster vehicles like this. We still might get there eventually, but it's certainly taking us a long time. We also haven't gotten lucky with disabling thrust on one of these Cosmos yet, although that hit looked like it rolled it over significantly. And they shouldn't damage us that fast with their lasers. The missiles can, but the lasers no. Oh, it's taking off into space now. Let's start doing some damage to the other Cosmos. Yeah, they're not that scary firepower-wise, so it'll take them a long time to kill us, but you can see they've chewed us up pretty badly all over. It can be really hard to destroy swarms like this with a single vehicle, even if large vehicles are usually better than fleets. But really being designed to fight the larger, slower-moving craft is hurting us a bit here, especially because the enemies have missile firepower, so I think our Sea-Wiz isn't really going for the enemy craft as much as I need it to be. And we're pretty far away right now, 2 kilometers. So we're having a lot of trouble hitting it when it's just sort of circling at 2 kilometers. We finally got a hit with our railgun, but it's not great. And the enemy craft is in kind of a death spin, and our missiles are not agile enough to hit a craft that's this fast doing a death spin. I wonder... oh, too low. Okay. I was gonna say, I wonder what happened to the other Cosmos that had lost control. Actually, that could be the... there was one other vehicle. I don't know where it went. The other scary thing is that these aren't particularly good Scarlet Dawn craft either. Although, to some extent, we actually do better against the really meta good Scarlet Dawn craft. Like, the Crucible really does not like taking Hesh missiles to the top armor, which is absolutely what we do to it. It takes... oh, now that it was slow, it took all of that thump damage. That'll absolutely cripple it. Yeah, so these missiles actually hit the Crucible. I haven't tested against the new Singularity because... thanks. Because when I built the Sekhmet, the Singularity was broken from the warp drive changes. And...
engaging now.
It's only been fixed recently, and I haven't tested against it. In the past, I couldn't beat the Singularity because it warped so quickly, or at least I couldn't beat it with railguns or missiles because it warped so quickly and so often that my turrets spent like 90% of their time just tracking to the new location. If I had a fleet of railgun craft, I could still beat it cost effectively because apparent to the craft that it was not targeting, its angular velocity or its angular deviation from the warps wouldn't be so high. Looks like we're going to have to pull the Sekhmet for repairs. It was still fighting well, but...
moving out.
It could really use to go back for some repairs. I'll bring it over here. This will be the... I think this is one of the mega factories over here. Or just 2 of these. Well, it'll still be good enough.
Moving out.
Actually, with all the materials we have here, this will be a better place.
Moving out.
I haven't set up a supply network yet, so they'll just go based off the materials that are there.
Listening.
This is taking an awkward route. Alright, before I fight the Damascus, I'm going to plunge directly into... well, I'm going to group these up into a fleet.
Listening.
And plunge directly into another Grey Talon fight. I'm going to have another big one after this against this group, but to me it feels fair to split these up into multiple groups this way. Actually, the Raw needs to fight closer to its combat range so that it doesn't charge through the enemy vehicles. Part of it is its pitch to target issue. It'll pitch forwards to look down at certain targets, so it's more of an issue with ships than anything else. And that'll cause the thrusters on the bottom to shoot it towards the enemy craft a little bit too quickly. That's part of what causes the issue. Well, one of the enemies spawned too high. I assume that'll resolve itself before it despawns, but it's interesting that the enemy vehicles don't spawn at their own combat altitude. I really wish I got to see mantlets more often for APS because they look pretty cool, but it's, you know, it's not a good idea to have them be exposed. We've already seen this vehicle. I still do make them exposed on some of my craft just because they look really cool. And the Warbird, which looks pretty good. Not built to be terribly meta, it looks like, but it still looks pretty good. And it seems to be our primary target. These things kind of remind me of TIE fighters. Looks like we've retargeted already. I believe this is the pike that we saw before. Taking a little bit of damage to the front. This area isn't terribly critical. It is where we are, so I do have some attachment to it. But it doesn't really matter that much.
Listening.
Looks like the pike is smoking. I'm going to shoot the Warbird instead. Also, there are more craft here, and we are a front-sider, so I'll get better lambs coverage if I point in this direction. However, we are not shooting right now, which is not a great sign, and I have no idea why. There we go. I think it's because our laser energy is pretty low, and we prioritize certain guns when our laser energy is low. In particular, the long ones that are more energy efficient at long range. I may want to change that, because if this gun gets destroyed or can't aim, and our lambs draws too much power, we might just never shoot. Ah, I can see much better now. Maybe my craft should always be like this. I might rebuild the cockpit anyway. I kind of like the flat screen in front of me, but we'd be a little bit faster if I did some drag reduction. And I could make something that has slightly better visibility as well. And in the meantime, it looks like we've torn apart the Warbird. I assume we'll go back to targeting the pike next, which is probably reasonable. I don't think there's anything else that's that scary left. I said we'll go back to targeting... Yeah, we did go back to targeting the pike. We've taken 1% damage. I really wish I could see how much damage my different craft have done. The Thundershocks shouldn't be responsible for that much damage. They have 60 laser power between them for the... As opposed to... I wish they weren't grouping up so much. They might, you know, ram each other. But as opposed to the 300 from the Raw. But it'd still be interesting to know. Also, none of these are optimized to do any damage against smoke, so... Some of these enemy vehicles can really slow us down, especially if our initial burst of damage goes into smoke, as opposed to deleting a craft without smoke. That can really be a problem. These are mostly rambots or paratentacles that have gotten us back up to health, I'm assuming. The Raw, it has 1 or 2 repair bots, I think, to slowly heal itself out of combat, but it is so few that it won't really do much good in combat. I could count them, I might have a few more than 1 or 2, but it's not enough to make much of a difference. Right, I think that's the last one. Maybe? Nope. Ah, well, whatever that was is pretty far away. And is very dead. Hey look, a Grey Talon submarine. Okay, this is gonna need manual aim. I don't have anything that can see underwater. Didn't seem terribly important fighting the Grey Talons, but I was unaware that they'd fielded a submarine against me. I jest, of course, it's not really a submarine. It just turned into one much earlier than was anticipated.
Listening.
Okay, at some point I'm going to do this
Moving
fight
out.
as well. I'm assuming that there's a raven's nest in here. So actually, maybe I won't do this fight. I want
Moving out.
an elephant or something against the
Listening.
raven's nest that'll bring in a lot more firepower. The Ra shouldn't fight the Palladium by itself
Listening.
because of its difficulty shooting at it. One of the issues about the excessive force is that so much of its firepower is in torpedoes that I think to resupply it, I'm going to send
Moving
it...
now.
Oops, that did
Moving
not
now.
send it where I wanted it to. I'm going to send it
Moving
past
now.
some of these bases, which might have some resources.
Moving now.
Then we'll send it to the Grey Talons. I'll do this fight in a little bit, but
Receiving.
I'm going to destroy Damascus first. Let's pull in the Falcon squadrons, just so I clean that up, even though killing Damascus may despawn the Steel Striders. I don't know if it will or not. Been recording for 42 minutes so far, so this might be our last fight. This will probably take a while. The Damascus, it's not very tough difficulty-wise, but it's made out of a lot of metal. I'm actually going to take a look at it because I'm not sure I've ever really paid attention to what it looks like. We do have some elephants in this fight, so we should shred it pretty quickly. Once we've killed it, I'm going to have to reroute these to the Grey Talons to help kill Raven's Nests in reasonable amounts of time. That or segments or something. But before we do too much damage to it, let's take a look. I think it's basically all that we're fighting. This Refox Materials factory may be a little bit close. It might cause bounding box clashes. Hopefully we'll be fine, though. Not a lot of firepower. So I don't think there's really that much to do except just watch incoming damage. So usually I try to find something relative to the battle to actually comment about during it, but there might really not be that much. We're just destroying one of these big hunks of metal. So, I don't know. Instead I'll just mention what I was up to when I was away, because I went to Georgia to go bouldering at Rocktown. So I did primitive camping up in the northwest corner of Georgia, which unfortunately a cold front rolled through on like my second or third day there, which made for good climbing, but was unseasonably cold for the camping. So there were a few frosts, but fortunately not actually that much rain. And overall, much better conditions than the last time I was there. I didn't actually do that many new climbs. The only ones that I did that I'd wanted to do going in was Ewalker Traverse and Golden Shower, which I both left the top out because it's super scary. The climb wasn't actually that hard with the right beta, but the top out's at like 13 feet or so is my estimate, and it's pretty sketchy. So I bailed off there. I also found and did Screaming Church Girls, which is the name is supposed to sound like that. Some people like naming climbs like that sometimes, where, you know, someone will say, I got meningitis, and, you know, that might sound terrible, but they intentionally named it like that so that it would sound it that way. And you could always phrase it differently. You could say I sent meningitis, but that's not really the point. The point is that you got meningitis. But Screaming Church Girls is particularly hard for me because it's just very thin crimps, which I'm absolutely terrible at. So that was the hardest that I crimped the entire trip. Alright, it looks like our crams have really done work here. That's so much damage in those cram volleys. We did get some free cram firepower out of the update because we'd already spawned in the elephants and the cram cannons were buffed. Down to 68%. It should start despawning soon. So these didn't used to have a huge amount of cram firepower. I think it's a little over 300. It's 450 now, so it must have been like 330 or something. I'm not really doing the math. But they're so much scarier than they were unstable, with the increased speed, increased shell health, increased damage. Craft costs a little bit more. Went from 330 something thousand to about 370. But they just absolutely obliterate targets now. They still have to hit. But if they do hit, the damage is incredible. And here they're really working well for the intended purpose, which is tearing apart just gigantic hunks of metal in a fairly cost-effective manner. Although with increased speed, they actually fight ship to ship pretty well. Prime cannons used to be so hard to hit other ships with if they weren't basically standing still. But they actually serve that role fairly well now, so it seems like they're in a pretty good place to me. I also like the buffs to armor-piercing high explosive rounds for APS. In the past, with all of my railgun ships, I've tried APHE, and I've just never been that impressed by it. I just lose... I basically have to build the ginormous railgun, and then lose a huge amount of the kinetic damage in exchange for some very middling high explosive damage against very select targets, because the penetration depth has to be well tuned to them. So, if I'm fighting Scarlet Dawn or something, and they have 10 meters of heavy armor in the front, even if I... Okay, so they're despawning now. Even if I do enough damage to get through all of that heavy armor, which I won't because it's armor-piercing high explosive, I might have the depth fuse tuned to turn too low, and I just do a little bit of explosive damage in the middle. To me, it seems better to just either do thump or to just put holes in enemy vehicles. That's really one of the things that railguns are good at, is just putting a hole all the way through an enemy vehicle.
Moving out.
And most vehicles don't tolerate that very well. Frontsiders can resist it just by having so much armor, but with battleships, you really have to do a good job of... Oh, I'll sneak in another fight or two. That one actually went pretty quickly. With battleships, you have to do a good job of adding a lot of redundancy and that sort of thing so that they can tolerate being pierced with railguns, because they're fairly thin, so you're just going to have railguns go through you. So turrets that pop, single points of failure, that sort of things, those are just not acceptable. Frontsiders, to some extent, can get away a little bit more with having single points of failure, because, for example, something like this, to get to the missiles from the front, there is just so much ship that you have to go through. There's a lot of heavy armor there. There's even heavy armor behind Rambot, just to make sure that something doesn't take out the top of the missiles. But for a single large ship,
moving out,
to take out those missiles, it would have to kill the ship first. So it's sort of acceptable to have single points of failure there. It's still not great, but
moving out.
It's not terrible. Okay, so I thought that despawned the Steel Striders because I got that message, but that must have one more thing that I have to destroy first. So a bunch of Raven's Nests. There are 5 Raven's Nest. Okay, so I know that the Thanatos and Eris is the Scarlet Dawn. Okay, so I could be missing something, but I don't see a Steel Strider's vehicle left here. Or a Steel Strider's thing left here. And we still haven't won yet. That means that I'm going to kill this thing, which, yeah, the Iceberg Logistics Hub. This is just so much armor. I really want to avoid fighting it, but I'll probably take the Sekhmet over to it instead of back to the Scarlet Dawn. Although, I'm going to need something to fight off these enemies, in particular something that can shoot up effectively, which I am very thin on. Once we get some more resources here, I'll build a few more things that can shoot up, but in the meantime, we're gonna struggle a little bit with that. Also, I don't really need to capture all of this stuff. I can pull a few vehicles out. Most of these aren't very big though, so
Listening.
they're not that interesting.
Listening.
Ah yes, we have the meme ship. Just finished building here. It's reasonably economical, so I'm not expecting... I'm going to let it refill off of this, but it doesn't need to carry that many materials.
Listening.
I'm not sure the Ra is going to be able to fight the Palladium. I think that's actually going to be a significant defect for me.
Listening. Moving out.
But since they're ignoring me, I think I'm just going to kill these with it instead. Or at least the Palladium's ignoring me. See, I think I'm going to record a total of an hour, and it'll probably be cut down to about 45 minutes or so. So, it gives me about 7 more minutes of content, which at the rate these fights have been going might be 1 or 2 more. I think we're killing the Magnetar first, our resource harvester for the Scarlet Dawn. I don't think they actually do very much. I could be wrong about that. Well, actually, we've already eviscerated it, so there's no real point in checking that. I think we're outside the engagement range of the Dreadnought currently, so it's not actually shooting at us either. Yeah, so our reverse thrusters are not that powerful. You're seeing our speed cut down fairly slowly. We're using more strafe than I really would have expected us to. Or maybe we took out something critical. I don't know why it wasn't firing at us. We definitely got close enough that it could have hit us, but we must have cut out some important component.
Engaging now.
Magnetar definitely doesn't have anything left, though. It's already down to 1/3 of its cost, so we definitely cut out something expensive and important very early on. Yeah, so that's really what the Rod does against somewhat smaller targets, although in total cost fairly even with the Ra that don't have smoke. Just the initial burst damage of lasers that have moderate storage capacity are pretty terrifying. And this didn't even do the, I don't know, surplus of 1 million laser damage that you'll sometimes see right at the beginning of a fight.
Listening.
I think we can just barely cap from inside this resource ring. The Rod does have some resource harvesters on it so that it can refuel. It says harvesting 100%, but we're obviously not harvesting.
Listening.
We're not quite in the resource ring, I think. It looked like I was placing us in it before, but I wasn't. Alright, we're capturing, we're in the resource ring. There's sort of, I consider it a failed build of mine, I mentioned it recently, that I was kind of intending to use here, but I am going to have to wait until the Mega Factory has resupplied before I can bring it in, which might be a little bit late. Maybe I'll swing the excessive force by the Palladium. Despite the fact that it won't be the most effective because its torpedoes aren't going to be able to hit, it has enough missiles and enough railguns that it'll still win. I'll try to play long enough to get this fight in. The Palladium being 250,000 resources is so small compared to the excessive force, which is a little bit of a meme vehicle in itself.
Listening.
Okay, it looks like we've refueled successfully. There's a Liberator cannon here, so I will fight this on its own. Actually, due to the way the elevations work, I think I'm going to come out here. And then, well, maybe I'll see if killing the Iceberg Logistics Hub despawns them. I really shouldn't be using 2 segments on the Twin Guard. I should pull one out for the Steel Striders.
Listening.
But I'm already here, so we'll just have to deal with it. This is one of the things about killing these bases. It's just such a resource drain because they'll go and try a rebuild immediately, even though it could never work. This is a new button. I'd seen it in the patch notes, but I hadn't actually looked for it yet. I wonder what the cat shark is grouping with. This has come all the way around. It definitely seems like there are a few issues when your vehicles have to go that far around. These are not going to be effective fleets against the Scarlet Dawn, but they're what I have right now, so I'm still going to send them in. They're not going to be able to hit fast things that effectively. I'm going to try to come down a little bit more with them so that I can cut across into the Grey Talons, because they will fight against the Grey Talons significantly more effectively. And the torpedo bombers are going to do absolutely nothing. I only have one because they're they were designed to be very much a rapid response craft that you would just send out where you needed it, because they're fairly selective for what they're actually useful for. If I do this fight, it's going to be the last one. Actually, basically whatever I fight is going to be the last one. I was really hoping to get the excessive force in first, but it's pretty slow. So maybe the appearance of the excessive force is going to have to wait. And I'll just fight the Andromeda as the outro fight. I'm going to intercept this Grey Talon fleet with the other Ra instead. Just go and pick up some of these resources. Nice. It's very fast, which means this is a laser craft. We should be good against it. But I was spawning in way above its maximum altitude. That shouldn't be allowed. But depending on its altitude, we won't be able to shoot at it. But we very much are shooting at it. Now, I don't know the Scarlet Dawn craft that well. This one looks like it has smoke, which might cause us some trouble. We did already do 120,000 laser damage to it. You can sometimes rip a craft that has smoke in half before it ever gets to use it. So missile and particle cannon. Particle cannon did us some reasonable damage. To me, the beams looked really wavy, but they must have been in decent focus. I don't actually know what's going on here with decorations. I see CJE parts, and I see railgun parts, but I don't know what these triangles sort of thing in the ring is coming from. I recognize most of the parts, but I don't know exactly how they did that. I think I would tweak this a little bit, maybe. Well, it's still pretty good the way it is, though. I think this looks fantastic. Let's see what we took damage, or how we took damage. Interesting. Where did this come from? Oh, it's from our bottom turret. No, not from our bottom turret. We're moving forwards a little bit. And it's got yellow bricks in it. Oh, it took our top turret off entirely. It must have done a piercing shot right through the turret base. I don't think there would be enough damage at this range from this thing, unless it got a really lucky shot that somehow just scooped out the turret base without hitting anything above or below it. These turrets are actually pretty big and pretty heavily armored, and they're flush here. That's just a lot of metal to get through, as well as the turret base. So I think there were some shenanigans going on. But it needs to recharge for the next one. And we're winning pretty handily. This is a relatively even fight as far as things go cost-wise. I don't know how close the Andromeda is going to try to get to us, though. You'd expect it to get pretty close because it uses particle cannons. Alright, see some more smoke coming out. Can't be the most powerful smoke, though. We're still getting respectable damage through. Our weapons are counterable, unlike the Andromedas. Took another hit. That was a big hit. Oh, I'm not in anything anymore. I don't have to pause so that I can actually see. Well, part of the reason it was such a big hit was because it hit the front of our craft like this, and it's reasonably delicate up here. I think the firewall, yeah, the firewall is back here. So, even after all of that, this stuff is sort of a temporary barrier. It protects Rambot. There are infinite Rambots in the sky waiting to come down. Just, you know, like the Asian woman who makes infinite copies of herself in Invincible or something, I don't know. It really, the fact that you can deploy more Rambots brings up more questions than it answers. But the whole nose of the ship is highly expendable. It looks like we're pitching down alarmingly, but our craft is allowed to pitch down up to 10 degrees to track enemy targets. So we're not actually at risk of falling out of the sky. And we haven't lost anything particularly critical. The Andromeda is now rapidly removing itself from our presence. So it looks like it does actually do remarkable amounts of damage. So maybe it did just delete that turret with thump damage or something. Maybe it did so much thump damage that it just despawned the entire turret, but couldn't propagate to the base construct. Took another hit. That one was not so significant. Why did I do that? Probably to the front of our craft again. Yeah, that one's much harder to see the effect of. I bet the particle cannons have been damaged significantly. Well, it's despawning now. It really doesn't have any firepower left. So that last hit probably came from particle cannons that were partially disabled. That's a lot of tubing. Yeah, personally, I don't have any particle cannon vehicles, but that one was actually pretty scary. We're going to retreat for some healing. 8%, we could keep fighting. We haven't lost anything significant. We have all of our laser firepower. We have 3 laser turrets left. We have the actual frontal armor that's behind the vestige of the cockpit. So we probably have about 2/3 of our frontal armor remaining. We could keep fighting, but I'm going to retreat and heal up. Alright, we're over the hour mark. I believe that's enough from the depths for one episode, although possibly not one day, because I think I'm going to start recording a video, or a build video this afternoon once I'm done editing this, and have taken some time away from the computer screen. I hope you all enjoyed watching, and I hope to catch you again in the next one.